Hi, I'm your host, Anand J. Sukadia, and this is the Limitless One podcast. Join me on this journey as I interview the most inspirational souls who are tapping into their limitless blueprint on a mental, physical, and spiritual level to thrive in uncertain times. If you feel you are so much more than just this body, just this life, and want to tap into your limitless potential, you're in the right place. Here we go, Starseeds. Brant, welcome to the podcast, brother. How are you?
Hey, good. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I was lucky enough to spend some time with you a couple of weeks ago. We were at a Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation event. And actually in January, that's where we first met. And we were together on the last day. You were sitting next to me. And we did a 4-hour meditation, side by side. It was really freaking cool, but it was nice to have that experience. But then we actually got to chat a little bit a couple of weeks ago at lunch, and talk about all the beauty and magic that's happening in our lives. So really want to appreciate you for coming on. I know you're a busy guy and you're doing a lot of really amazing things.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, that was wild. The Marco Island situation. That was wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. All right, buddy. So let's jump into it. What does living a limitless life mean to you?
So I think that when you get into this, I get into the 4 quadrants. It takes me back there. I don't know if you know what the 4 quadrants are, but these people do like a Venn diagram. If you might have seen it, and it's 4 quadrants overlaid. And then in the middle is like your bliss point. And I think limitlessness applies to mental, physical, financial, and spiritual limitlessness. And I think that's different, depending on where you're at. But physically, let's start there. Just being able to do what you want to do physically. I like to snowboard. I like to golf. I'm in and out of the gym. Not being held back by anything, having a good diet, being able to travel and get up and get around how I see. Financially, I think that means to be able to do what you want when you want to do it. And be able to take vacations and go see something. And if something piques your interest, like a meditation retreat, like you get on a plane, you book it, you go. I think that mental, when we start to get into the mental and spiritual plane, that's where it's really important. Mental limitlessness is just constant knowledge, constant growth. The only constant is change. And so seeking new knowledge and seeking new truth and really going after the truth rather than what, my ego or the world might want to filter knowledge as, because then that gives me a good foundation spiritually. And spiritual limitlessness, man. I mean, we could get into that. For me, that's being able to lay down and get into a meditation so deep that I leave my body and I could lucid dream, or I could even sometimes astral travel. I mean, and this is getting, into metaphysics and maybe like a little too deep here, but
there is no such thing as going too deep on the limit.
All right.
Let's go.
Let's go. Being able to break through and experience other dimensions and other beings. And I think that the information that we are able to absorb and download from those realms can create limitlessness in these realms. So
that's so beautiful, brother. And very similar to my journey. I'm curious, like, how did you start getting into this mindset of, really living a balanced life in all of 4 quadrants? And what was there a spark, like an initial spark that led you on this path? Or was it kind of like over a long period of time?
It was definitely taking in things over a long period of time. I was like 5 years old, man, and I knew that what we were being told wasn't it. And I remember I was a little kid and I was having my mom take me to crystal shops and like I wanted to go to the museum and I went to this powwow with like these Native American like chiefs and shamans. It was like the Sioux, the Lakota, the Hopi. And I'm like a little kid doing fire dances with the natives. And you could feel that there's more coming through. So that started me on kind of my quest for knowledge and my spiritual path. And then by the time I was 19, 20, 21, I was doing drum circles, sweat lodges. There was this epic guy. He was a Hopi. They called him the corn farmer who walks between the worlds. Like, he was leading these epic drum circles. We had a big sequoia tree stretched with the elk skin that you could probably fit 13, 14 people around this drum. And some of these guys that would come through were just powerhouses. And so that continued on. And then did music in my early 20s, made a little bit of money, left the music project and realized, like, I need to understand money. Got into traditional finance. And so that's kind of how these have built for me. And then, mentors along the way who are kind of refining everything in one area or another, that have gotten me to where I'm at now, where I'm the most balanced I've ever been.
That's beautiful, man. It sounds like you're living such a magical life, and what a blessing to be able to be so young and kind of figure out the spiritual aspect first, right? Or at least get your toes dipped in there, because a lot of people, they wait a very long time, go after the riches, and then they're like, oh wait, I'm not balanced. I have all the money, I have all the possessions, but I don't have the happiness or the inner bliss. And I really believe that is the foundation. If you can't be a generator of happiness within yourself, then how are you supposed to achieve more? Like, if you're not happy when you're poor and you don't have anything, versus having everything and being miserable, your problems even get more amplified. So you're an example of what to do in life. It took me a long time to kind of figure out all the different vectors of life, and but I love this journey, because the more I dive into it, the more I lean into it, the more magic that happens, and it's effortless. The things that just get attracted to me, like Joe Dispenza, going to his events. I heard about this guy. I was like, okay, yeah, at some point I'd like to do a retreat or something like that. But the universe said, no, you're going to fucking go. Because 4 of my friends in a 2-week period told me, hey, I was at a Joe Dispenza meditation event, and I was thinking about you during my meditations, and I really think that you should go. And that was 4 people in 2-week period. Okay, that's a sign. The same time, my girlfriend had a friend of hers who she's been corresponding with. They're both into breath work. And she also said to my girlfriend, hey, I was at a meditation retreat in Cancun with Joe, and I was thinking about you, and I'm like, you should go. We were talking about the synchronicities, and we're like, okay, we need to freaking do this. And it was so funny that as soon as we made that intention, Dr. Joe opened up Marco Island in Florida in January. Funny enough, me and Kate, we actually booked a trip to Florida that same exact time period. We only had to change the dates by 2 days. So, when you really are tapped into this to this flow of energy and insight, it's effortless life.
Right. That's absolutely true. But follow the breadcrumbs, and that's it. And then they turn into, now it's like, I feel like I'm just like skiing from one loaf to the next. Like, it's not breadcrumbs. Like, we got loaves of bread now. And yeah, man. And I don't know that I've got it all figured out. I like you said, I like the word journey. And I think the key is to stay present and centered, in the heart. I think I've got a lot more to learn. The more I learn and the more I figure out, the more I realize I don't know anything, and I could refine myself so much more. And there's so much more to go. But yeah, I don't know. I'm 35. I'm not that young. So yeah. I'm like in the middle here, where I'm glad I did figure it out now, though, rather than at 50 or 55. And, I think moving with the understanding, or at least the possibility that everything that is occurring in the spiritual planes is actually filtering down and creating this plane of existence. So if we create our lives from that, and like you mentioned, happiness and love and unity, and compassion, then all of a sudden the life that builds out there, that seems like it's out there, is more of a reflection of what's going on in here. And yeah, then it's all connected. The synchronicities are all guiding you to a better self, and the relationships and the friendships you develop are more pure and authentic, and it's golden.
Yeah, I truly believe everything you said is 100% correct. And I believe that spiritual realm where you reside, that's where you're generating your reality. Even for people who are not into the spiritual side of it, and that's totally understandable. A lot of people haven't gotten to that place yet. Some actually listen to this podcast. But what I will say is just think about your physical thoughts, right? 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even a year ago, whatever you were thinking is now getting created in your physical reality, right? So if you say, I want to buy a house in 5 years and you have that house, okay, that started with that seedling, right? It started with the feeling and emotion, and you started moving wave towards that destination. Now, everything that you have right now, like, Dr. Joe says, it's like based on your previous thoughts, and 99% of your thoughts today are directly related to the thoughts you had yesterday, and then the day before, and the day before, and the day before. So it's like a game of telephone. So if you're constantly losing a little bit of that juice along the way, then yeah, you're going to get out of alignment. But when you start really taking ownership of your thoughts and your reality and say, listen, I am in charge of this destiny of life, and I'm just going to trust the universe, but I'm going to put myself in the right direction, in the right thought patterns, and surround myself with the right people. And that's so important. And we'll get back to that in a bit. But you can change your reality in a very short amount of time. And through the meditation, entering that spiritual realm, time doesn't exist there. So you can literally create from that 5-dimensional place, and things can happen tomorrow rather than waiting like a very, very long time to see those fruitions.
Right. Like that 4-hour meditation, that could have been 30 minutes. That could have been 2 days. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's great. And I hear you on the people that are not tuned into spirituality. I think everybody maybe has their event or has, something that occurs in their life. Call it the dark night of the soul, or call it a difficult time. And I think what's cool now is you have this bridge between science and spirituality. You get into particle physics and electrons and photons and biophotons and quarks and quasars. And now the scientific, which I'm really big into as well, the scientific community is sort of, and quantum physics and quantum mechanics, it's kind of pointing back at, not necessarily like organized dogmatic religion, but the fact that, hey, on some level, this is all connected, like I got a bunch of cells in my body and none of them have a clue who the other ones are. Like they're all conscious. This is one thing communicating with itself right now. And maybe other entities are more conscious than others. But the fact that everything is pointing towards connectedness and unity and oneness and mentalism, the fact that what we think, how far you want to go with that, or how shallow you want to stay in the kiddie pool, what we think and what we feel absolutely creates our reality and absolutely has an impact on ourselves and the rest of the world and the people closest to us.
Yeah, unity is such an important aspect of life, and your soul longs for it, your heart longs for it. Deep connection with humans, with the earth, with your spirit, all of it, right? But then you look at reality of the 3D consciousness right now, and there's so much division and hatred, and it's because there's a need for that love, but it's not being fueled. It's like the opposite is being fueled. That's why there's so much disharmony in so many elements of society, mentally, physically, spiritually, ethnicity wise, race wise, countries going to war with each other. Even in the financial system, there's a lot of disharmony because it's not unified. It's all taking away and being separate from each other. And, if there's one thing in life we have to realize, it has to be, we have to go in that direction of unity, because otherwise we have no chance as a human species. And eventually all of our souls want to become, enlightened, but we all need to make that effort on this individual journey, so then we can all reconnect as one, as you were saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. I heard somebody, I forget who, but somebody said, this wants to be the CEO, and this is a really good secretary, but this needs to be the CEO. Like this is what has to run the company. And I think if we find a way to get in our heart first and stay there, and again, the brain is a great secretary, like we need that. But if we're coming from duality in the head, we look at the duality in the world, and I think that's what creates all of these problems, is this illusion of us versus them and separation. And it goes, from politics to nationalism. And that's why we see a lot of these things and these problems occurring. Whereas, and I do think that there is knowledge from duality, because we come here into this realm with a limited sensory experience, with how we perceive things. And I wouldn't know that it's daytime out right now unless I knew what nighttime was. I wouldn't know love unless I knew pain and sorrow and sadness. And that goes for bliss and happiness and anger. And so I do think that there's value in experiencing duality, but the duality, it's not like one side of this is right and the other side is wrong. It's both parts of duality are absolutely necessary to be balanced within the individual and perceived without judgment or without choosing sides or like picking my favorite team, and that's how we kind of transcend what's going on in the world. Now, if some structure or system or whatever it be can trick you or me or anyone else into thinking, hey, pick a favorite sports team, right? That's your team. And we're going to just like bash on all the other teams. Okay, like sports might be all right, but whoa, what about politics, where we can get you to subscribe to a political party and you're going to like disassociate from friends and family members because you've chosen this team and the other team exists. And then you look at, the symbolism above these things, and it's like, well, the right and the left wing are part of the same bird. And once we start to see both sides as valid and also not hate another person or even judge or dislike another person based on their opinions or their beliefs, because that's what creates all the equity in the world, is the fact that
you need diversity of thought, you need diversity of life, right?
We should love that. Should love that about other people. So yeah.
Very, very well said. So believe it or not, we talked about having you on as a talking about finance.
Fun stuff, man.
But we definitely, we have to look at the whole spectrum of life. But can you tell us a little bit about your background? And you mentioned that you were in traditional finance, and how you got very successful in that, and then you decided to pivot in life. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, that again, left the music industry, went back to school, figured out I needed to learn about money because I realized there's a lot I didn't know. Went to work at one firm, worked really, really, really hard, got to where I was a manager at the next firm. And it was good. I think that 99% of all the financial advisors, everybody that I met are great people. I think that the system is a little bit broken. And I worked so hard to attain this position. And it's just so funny because it's like, this is the universe testing you. You're going to do what's right, or you're going to just stick with the program here. And the more I got into this and the more I realized exactly how it works, I just realized that whole system is broken. And it's failing and it's crumbling right now, along with a lot of other systems. I mean, we have the pharmaceutical model of healthcare crumbling right now. The structure of government right now, there's a lot of these systems that are failing and crumbling. But as far as finance goes, I think we just have this dinosaur of a model that was working 100 years ago, and it was working 60, 70 years ago. And as time speeds up, and particularly with what happened with COVID, now you have some of these old models that just, I don't know that they make sense anymore. And so a little over a year ago, I stepped away from that after seeing exactly how, this side of finance works and that side of finance. And there's a lot of different moving parts. And I just realized, oh, wow, I don't know that this is the right place for me anymore. So.
Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of people who haven't worked in finance, they don't really have an idea of the inner workings. Can you unpack that and tell us, what is the true reality of what goes on in the financial system and their model of revenue and versus, investing other people's money for them?
Right. I will try to make this short because we could go for days on this one. So I think that, again, this model is just outdated and broken. I don't think that financial advisors are out here trying to get you. I think they're amazing people who want to help you, but they're working within a framework that that came up, during the Industrial Revolution. Like, we didn't have planes and this model was still going. We didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones. So you've got different areas. Well, let's start with like the wirehouses, because everybody's seen Wolf of Wall Street. Okay. Yeah. Most people have seen Wolf of Wall Street. Those firms would be called like a wirehouse in my terminology. And their business model is AUM, stands for Assets Under Management. And it's to get your money and it's to bring it into their firm and charge you a percentage. Sometimes this is an annual fee. Sometimes this is an actively managed account. It's a fee per trade. So, for instance, you've got $1 million with them and you might make 15%, 20%, 25%. You've got an active trader working for you, which is a little more rare nowadays, because it provides more risk to the client. But let's say you got $1 million there and this guy's making 1.5% per trade on your total amount of money. So you're making 20, you can make 200 grand a year, 20%, let's say. But if he does 5 trades a month, 12 months out of the year, what is that? 780K that this dude's making off your $1 million per year. Now that may or may not be fair. Some guys will take those percentages and that's fine. But the name of the game is not distribution and not real strategic planning. It's like, get your money and move it into their accounts and like hope that you die. And so, I don't know that that's necessarily the best model. People have followed it and it's what's in place. But look at the market right now, and you take a lot of these other, macroeconomic factors. I don't know how stable the stock market is. And then you have these products, these financial products that were created by this same system. You've got, let's say you're middle class. You got the opportunity for an IRA, right? Because once you make above a certain amount of money, you can't have an IRA. So, or you've got your 401k, right, from your company, and they're doing a match, which is great. Like that worked for so long. 3% match, 5% match, it helps employee retention. You're going to stick with them for 5 years. You're going to be fully vested. Yay. And a lot of these accounts are placed in a little bit more secure, like ETFs, mutual funds. You can pull 9 to 12%. And you can't touch this money till you're 59 and a half, or you can't touch this money till you're 65, or else you get penalties. The structure of it is there to help people. But what happens when COVID hits? We print $3 trillion and inflation's at 15%, and you're making 9%. All of a sudden, you're losing 6% per year in your Roth IRA. You're losing 6% in your 401k. Oh, and you have no liquidity. So let's say you did want to get into something else with your money. Well, you can't touch it. It's trapped in this vehicle. So then you have firms that are a little more balanced. You have like the main 4. You've got Guardian, Northwestern Mutual. You've got Mass Mutual. There's 4 main life insurance firms, and their strategic planning is like protection based, right? So if you come to me and you've got 200K, if I'm at a wirehouse, I'm like, dude, yeah, let's throw all that money in the market, 200 grand. Like, you've worked really hard for this. And and you're married. Let's say you got a wife, you got 2 kids, and you're starting to really build your life here, and you die, or your wife dies, and she gets 200 grand, and you've been making 150K a year. What does that look like? Okay, so she's got what? A little over a year's worth of money. And if it's trapped in a retirement account, she's got to pay massive penalties to get that money. Or, what these other firms are saying, and the mutuals, I am more in alignment with this strategy, where they're going to say, hey, why don't you have some life insurance on yourself? Why don't you cover yourself and your family for a few $1 million, which is relatively cheap, and there's limits based on how much money you can make. So something happens to you, something happens to your wife, you're going to get a check, and you're at least going to be set. Now, that business model still encompasses AUM. Like my old firm was paired with Fidelity. Fidelity is, I believe, the largest manager of retirement funds in the country now. And you would do that, but then there's nobody really coaching you because it's not part of the business model on what business is. How do you start a business? Does it make sense to get into real estate? Yes. Do all super wealthy people own real estate? Yes. But that's not part of that business model. Like, they can't profit off of coaching you there. So I think that what's going on right now, particularly because of COVID, renders all these old business models obsolete. And you combine that with inflation and the devaluation of the dollar, and the fact that the Fed, this is another thing that's important for people to understand. The Federal Reserve, right? The Federal Reserve is not part of the United States government. The Federal Reserve functions as an offshore entity. They're not governed by the US, and they print money from nothing, and they call it quantitative easing, right? So
I love their terminology. They always come up with the nicest names for everything, which means the absolute opposite of what they say.
What a sophisticated term for counterfeiting money.
Yeah.
Because if you and I decided we wanted to do our own quantitative easing, and we wanted to print, not even $1 trillion, like we want to print you $1 million and we want to print me $1 million, because, right, like COVID, I get it. We want to do our own bailout. We're in jail, man. Like, that's illegal. So the Fed operates to some degree to the side of and above the US government. And so they print money and they loan it to the government, right? Or they loan it to banks, the big banks, at interest. And then the big banks loan it to businesses or to you and me. And so, look, I mean, you don't even have to be a master of economics, but okay, so we got debt on top of debt, and then they'll loan it again on top of more debt. What is the outcome here? Unending debt. Like, the system is built to create debt. And this one might get me into trouble, but the Rothschild family is very heavily associated with the Federal Reserve. Some people know this, some people don't. There's a very famous quote from, I believe it's Evelyn de Rothschild, and he says, "There's no greater form of slavery than the enslavement of those who are under the impression that they're free."
He's got a lot of quotes. There's another one that he says is, "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who runs the country."
Right. Because on in a lot of aspects, it doesn't matter if it's Obama or Biden or Bush or Clinton. The Fed has so much power over the government, and people don't realize this because they watch their TV and they don't ask their own questions. And so, I think understanding not only how the traditional financial system works as far as the business model goes, but then understanding where that comes from is really, really important.
Yeah, I think there's two aspects of the Fed that really blew my mind when I first heard about it. The first thing is it's owned by a collection of private banks, right? So private banking families. So there's, they say the number is like 6, right? So there's 6 families that essentially own the entire Federal Reserve. So people who think there's nothing federal about Federal Reserve or Federal Express. Federal Express is a private company, right? It's the same deal. Secondly, the money that they keep talking about, the debt of the nation, what do we owe this money to? Who do we owe this money to? It's actually these private banking families. So not a lot of people think that, and they don't realize that. They're like, oh, we're in all these $30 trillion of debt or whatever it is. And we owe it to private families who are constantly, this is like modern day financial slavery, and it's been going on for a very long time.
Yep. I think it's this dinosaur of an outdated model. And to put that into a funny, like $30 trillion worth of debt. Okay. What does that really mean? I believe there's roughly $40 trillion of liquid currency in the world. So if everybody just got all the money that they have and went and paid it to just the Fed, like just the United States debt, we had everybody in the whole world go give all their money here, then we could take care of that. But it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It's a mind game, I think. And it's a mind game to to keep feeling, or people feeling disempowered, feeling like they can't do anything about it. And you really do, with that equation of loaned money on loaned money on loaned money. So they know that it's going to create debt. You really have to play the system smart. You have to understand your percentages, savings, investment, and you almost have to create a flow of money within you that is greater than the system and greater than what's against you,
And then also the hidden tax of inflation. A lot of people don't really understand the true impact that inflation has on a society. I mean, we're just starting to really feel it for the first time with, food shortages, prices of gas going up, prices of food going up. And then there's so much chaos and everything in the world. But at the end of the day, if your salary went up by 2 to 3%, you are losing a ton of money because everything else is going up in cost.
Right. And I think that, inflation is high, hasn't been this high since the 80s. And it was a little bit different of a situation then. I think we're just starting to see the ramifications of what has happened here. And you could say COVID's to blame. You could say fiscal policies to blame, the reaction to COVID. You could say it's all a setup to head towards the Great Reset, which is what's being talked about in Davos. But the fact of the matter is we've printed and essentially given away about $3 trillion over the past few years. And we're happy to do more of it. And what that means for money supply, right? Over 50% of all of the US dollars in circulation were minted in the past few years. So what does that mean for inflation? People, and is the CPI accurate? We see these numbers like 6.8, 8%, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, all these calculations were changed, I believe. Like if you look at the true, like the previous version and from the 1990s, it's close to like 30 something percent if you calculated the same way.
Everything into it. Yeah, I think very conservatively, 15 to 18% is probably a more realistic number. There's a really cool website, Shadowstatscom, SHADOSTATS.com. And it's just alternative news source, but they do a thing where they go into major cities every year and they'll purchase like the same item, the same exact item, or like a gallon of gas from the same place. And they really have an interesting take, and they have a bunch of other really cool stuff on there as well. But an interesting take on inflation. And yeah, I think 15 to 18 conservatively. It's funny that the CPI doesn't even take into account real estate prices like that. Nobody owns homes, right? Like that doesn't matter or make sense. And it's interesting, and what it's done for investors, and part of the reason why it's yielded this traditional business model obsolete is because, again, if you're getting 12% returns, that's a pretty good return. 12, 13%, if you're holding ETFs or mutual funds or anything like that, that's a good return according to the market. And if inflation's at 15 to 18, you're still losing, 3, 5, 6% of your money per year. So what it's done is it's pushed investors farther out onto the risk spectrum in order to realize gains, because like nobody wants to lose. And you might take a year to adjust or something like that, but you got to make new moves, and you got to adapt. And so people are trying to figure out new ways to start businesses. I think automation, electronic vehicles, like that type of stuff, green energy, solar, these things that where industry is heading, and it's also going to help keep the planet alive, because that's another issue that we're coming up against. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's an interesting territory to navigate right now.
For sure. I think everybody is it was a hard time swallowing that red pill, but it's the actual reality of what's going on. And we talked a little bit about how you left that traditional system, and like what are the things that you're doing now to kind of be a part of the solution for this whole system of money to be more empowered for yourself and also for other people. So go into that a little bit.
Right. I'm get established in our firm, and I've got clients, and I'm in a management position. Like, I'm able to bring on people if I want, and all this stuff. And I'm watching, like, I watch Mass Mutual buy $100 million worth of Bitcoin. That's a life insurance company, right? Like, why? And so, I guess for the purposes of this and transparency, Mass Mutual has essentially drained their securities arm, and their business model is now to completely push whole life insurance, which again used to work because you're guaranteed a percentage, which is 4 to 5%. Now it doesn't make any sense because you're still taking a big loss. But why is this life insurance company that's been around a long time buying $100 million worth of Bitcoin? You watch Fidelity, right? You watch Fidelity invest in Bitcoin mining. They bought 20% of Marathon Digital Holdings. You're seeing companies like Grayscale Bitcoin Trust pop up. You're seeing big like Riot Blockchain. Those guys are here in Colorado and Castle Rock, based out of. You're seeing Wells Fargo offering Bitcoin to wealthy private clients. You're seeing Morgan Stanley offering Bitcoin to wealthy private clients. And the funny thing is they're still sticking with this traditional finance model of, like, they'll sell you the Bitcoin, but they're going to keep it. Like, it's not in your wallet. It's not in your cold wallet. It's not in your hot wallet. Like, you own Bitcoin, but it's technically their Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. They want their hands on it, And so I'm seeing this come through, and COVID hits, right? Like, we're not even in the office anymore. No suits and ties. I'm on Zoom calls with all my clients, and I'm just kind of watching what's going on. And after a few months, after six months, it's like, this is going to be big. And so after seeing every major player in the game, like BlackRock Securities, these guys manage $7 trillion. They're the US and China, and then BlackRock Securities is technically the third wealthiest country per money anyways in the world, all making massive entry points into digital currency, particularly Bitcoin. And then you see on the news, like, oh, Bitcoin's so volatile. Oh my gosh, and I'm like, there's something going on here. I have such a big window into this world. These guys are going to make sure they don't lose, and
also talking poorly about it will also, lower the price and everything like that. So they're getting really good entries. People like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett saying it's rat poison and, these kinds of things. Jamie Dimon a couple of years ago is like, don't put money in Bitcoin. It's a scam. Meanwhile, he's filing patents to create his own digital currency coin, for JP Morgan. It's insane. You have to look beyond the layers of what they're saying and then what they're actually doing. Right.
And so, and I was in Bitcoin way before then, into Bitcoin back in 2016, 2017, because I just investing in it, not into mining at this point. But the blockchain and SHA 256 and like, wow, this is really sound money. This eliminates human error for the most part from currency. So fast forward to where I'm looking around at, and I threw some money into to Bitcoin mining. And I'm like, this makes sense, right? Like, you dollar cost average into an asset that you appreciate, that you think is going to do well, that you believe in, and you do that over some time, and everything ends up well for you. And so I start mining, and I'm just seeing what's going on with COVID, and then based on my own investment strategies and based on the decisions that I was able to make, and at this point I was still a little bit in equities, securities, like in traditional markets, trading options. I'm pretty good at doing that as well. And I had realized that I was doing better than our GA and our VP at our firm combined. And I'm like, why am I listening to these guys?
Yeah.
Like, why? And I'm trying to tell them, hey guys, this is coming. We should try to align with this, but the system is so tight with the SEC and rules and regs and all that they have to wait for the changes to come from the top and tell them that they're allowed to do this or they're allowed to do that. And again, good people, like, it has nothing to do with the people. It has to do with the flaws in the system. So I'm seeing all this and I realize, I don't need this job at all. So I go full-fledged into Bitcoin mining, play around in the DeFi space a little bit, but Bitcoin mining is just, it makes the most sense to me. I don't see El Salvador legalizing Ethereum or Cardano or Dogecoin as its national currency. They make Bitcoin their national currency. Africa, one of the countries in Africa, just made Bitcoin legal tender as well. And you've got a number of other countries that are following suit. The US government's got a bunch of nations are holding Bitcoin now. So it just all made sense. And I'm like, you know what, I got to jump. All the signs are there. We were talking about the breadcrumbs. And I'm glad I did. I'm in a way better space now. I have way more freedom. I don't answer to anybody anymore. And then I brought, some of my really close clients, friends, family members with me. So
that's wonderful. And, just a point on that regarding regulations of the financial institutions that they can't necessarily go, invest in Bitcoin in many ways. So this is the first time in history where the little guy, the small fish, can actually front run the big guys. But if you start listening to, all CNBC and, all these corporations telling you how Bitcoin is so bad and it's like the worst thing in the world and you're going to get scammed, you're going to lose all your money. Every single person that's invested in Bitcoin, as long as you're in it for a 4-year cycle, you're going to be making money, and not just a little bit of money, really, really good returns on everything. And if you look at it as a long-term investment, it could be the greatest singular asset that this world actually has. It's digital. It's liquid. You can move around with it. If you have a piece of real estate in California, you can't carry that to Costa Rica when you move. There's a lot of tax implications and all this kind of stuff. For anyone who's looking to learn a lot more about Bitcoin and why it's so powerful, I think Michael Saylor is a great. He's a great person to listen to, and his take on why Bitcoin is the apex asset in the history of the world.
He's a monster. I was down in Miami at the Bitcoin conference, standing 5 feet away from the guy while he gave a presentation or a post-presentation talk. And yeah, he gets it. He's really smart. He's done really well with it. Definitely apex currency, 10 years down the road. Like you said, liquidity is really, really important. And at this point now, you've got an asset that's appreciated at an average of 200% per year for a decade. It's the best asset that's ever existed, and I still think there's another decade in it before we see it start to mature, based on mining and as far as the supply goes, So yeah, and it is for the little guy. I did want to mention, for anybody watching this who does have an IRA with Fidelity just announced that you are able to allocate 20% of your IRA to Bitcoin, which is huge. You won't actually own the coins. You won't be able to send them to your wallet, but at least you will have exposure to an asset, and there's only kind of Bitcoin, Ethereum, other things on the DeFi platform that are outperforming inflation. There's only a couple things that are doing it. So what makes sense is, hey, let's get behind those things,
Yeah, for sure. Tell us a little bit about what Bitcoin mining is, if you could break it down for us. I think a lot of people have heard the term, not necessarily knowing what it actually is.
Right. So Bitcoin mining today is used to be able to mine Bitcoin on a laptop. Now Bitcoin mining today is big warehouses, and a small one of these is 50,000 square feet, and you can do it a smaller operation, but you've got these computers called ASIC computers, application specific integrated circuit computers. They look like big toasters with fans on them, and they do one thing. They solve algorithms to mine Bitcoin. And what you have in SHA-256, it's secure hash algorithm 256. And so these computers are told, hey, we have all these variable inputs, right? The input is variable, but we have to solve for one specific output. So the output is known. And then every computer in the Bitcoin network globally is constantly working to try to solve that algorithm. The one that does it hashes the block, and it gets rewarded the Bitcoin. So if that computer happens to be in your Bitcoin mining operation, or at least in your Bitcoin mining pool, then all of the people will share the rewards of that. Now, the beauty of this is each block builds upon the next block. So the first block that was ever hashed over a decade ago is still in the blockchain, and it's still there. There's a record of the transactions. There's a record of everything. And so as this builds upon itself, it creates a huge level of stability. And it would take a lot of computers. Like, somebody would have to control over 50% of the Bitcoin and 50% of the network in order to crack this code. So you could hack it, but then if somebody even really wanted to hack it, they would have to decide between if they wanted to go back like 5 years ago and alter one block and alter that, or if they just wanted to use that computing power now to mine more Bitcoin. And it always makes sense to just mine more Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So that in essence is what Bitcoin mining is. It takes the human error out of money, and it creates digital perfect money. And I don't even like the word money, because it's more so digital real estate. It's very scarce digital real estate. Mm-hmm. Is what we're creating.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about, like the decentralization aspect of it. It keeps it in an integrity, right? You talked about human error before. You might have human error, simple mistake, or you might have, companies that have, they're trying to steal money from people. There's so many scenarios of, theft and all that kind of stuff in financial markets, and nobody ever gets held accountable. In Bitcoin, you cannot like game the system, because the system is completely decentralized. Every single node, every single, mining rig, and every person that owns Bitcoin is a living, breathing part of that system. So you can't essentially change anything. And then you have all this transparency. If you want to look at a transaction from years ago, it's all there, and exactly, if the wallets are public, exactly who has it.
Right. And I think you do hear some of these stories of, oh, somebody lost this Bitcoin or that Bitcoin. We should get into how that happens.
Yeah.
The decentralization of this and what it's meant to be is all of a sudden you become the bank. You are the banker. You're not. So where hacks happen and stuff like that is because people keep their Bitcoin on some random exchange. And so what they've done is, again, they've been tricked into giving up their power, and they put their Bitcoin on this exchange, and then the exchange is not insured, or the exchange gets hacked, or someone just rug pulls and takes all the money. But if you buy your Bitcoin and then you send it to your cold wallet is really good terminology to
essentially it's offline. It's on a hard drive essentially, and you have your passwords.
Man, I've got a bunch of them. I've got one that's not even unwrapped yet. I could go grab it in a minute. So yeah, you have your security keys, and you don't show those to anybody. You write them down, you keep them safe, and you write down your passwords, and you don't let anybody see them, and you keep your money in the blockchain on your cold wallet. Nobody can take that from you. It's actually the safest, purest, most secure asset and storage that there is. So
yeah, for sure. Now, I know Bitcoin mining, it's tell us a little bit about, for because you talk about how it's done at such a large scale. So for smaller fish, if they wanted to get involved in it, how would it work? And is it too late? A lot of people say, oh, it might be too late to get into these kinds of things for someone who's a little bit smaller investor.
Define small fish. Is this like somebody net worth of less than 100K, less than?
Yeah, let's say under $1 million, right?
Under $1 million.
Yeah.
So I think if you, just for the numbers sake of things, one Bitcoin miner is just under 10 grand right now for new gen technology, like a S19, like a 110 terahash Bitmain, and that miner, based on today's Bitcoin price, will break you even on the amount of Bitcoin it mines versus what you could have just bought cash. 2 years roughly, given difficulty right now, give or take a little bit. So I think that if you want to go long on Bitcoin, I think you can still get into mining. I think you want to have, 50 to 100K would get you in the game. Now you have to pay your electric bills. I don't think you go do this on your own because, you might be able to gear up your house to handle 1 or 2 miners. Past that, like you're going to burn your house down, man. It takes a lot of power to run these things. You can find hosting. I've done hosting for friends and family and stuff like that. So that works. And what we're working to solve right now is to create I'm working with, I don't know if you met Romain at the retreat, but he runs a fund in Dubai, amazing guy. Working with a couple other people within that community to create a token, a coin that allows people to fractionalize Bitcoin mining, where if they own even $1,000 of this coin and they stake it, they're getting a payout every month of rewards from a particular Bitcoin mining operation in order to give people exposure to this. Because I do firmly believe like this is about empowering the people, and that's why it started and that's why it's moving. And it's not about Fidelity buying $500 million worth of Bitcoin miners and getting all the Bitcoin for themselves. It's like, how do we get this into the hands of the people so that they have some stable ground to stand on after this storm is over? Because what's going on with the dollars. So there's a couple of different ways for small fish. And if you're just getting into things, and if you're just moving into the space and you have $5,000 or $10,000, I think you just go buy some Bitcoin and you just put it on a cold wallet, or maybe split it 50-50 Bitcoin and Ethereum, and get that on a cold wallet. And then as that scales up, you can look at other opportunities. I guess I could leave an email or something for you to.
Yeah. If anybody wanted to reach out to you about different options, if you can help them out, that would be fantastic. So you mentioned, it requires a lot of electricity, a lot of, people who talk negatively about Bitcoin mining, they talk about the electricity costs, how it's bad for the environment. Can you tell us a little bit about the reality of that versus like, what's actually, being talked about in terms of how dangerous it is?
So as far as the Bitcoin network, with it, I mean, more miners have gone online now, but the Bitcoin network uses about the same amount of electricity or less than the Visa MasterCard payment system. So when you go swipe your Visa and your MasterCard, all of those machines plugged in globally, the Bitcoin network is about on par with that. So it's not using some ridiculous amount of electricity that's like causing global warming and ruining the planet and all that type of stuff. Now, if we get into places where Bitcoin is being mined, like we've got an operation in Pennsylvania, and you have these old industrial towns, like big, huge turbine power plants, coal power plants, and they're still producing energy. And if that energy doesn't get used, it gets wasted. It just dissipates into the grid. So what we try to do, and what many of the miners are trying to do, is go find efficient, affordable power. And you go to a town where the power is just being wasted anyways. So the electricity is being paid for. You can even create some jobs, and you can stabilize the grid entirely. So you don't have huge up and down fluxes in the grid. Because, you go put 5, 10, 15 megawatts worth of power alive in one of these old towns that built this infrastructure for a bunch of steel plants and paper mills and production and machine factories. And all these factories are shut down. The real estate's not being used. And you go do it like that, I think that there's a lot of valid arguments towards it. Now, on the flip side, do I think that we should lean towards solar and wind and hydroelectric, and we should start to try to make not only Bitcoin mining, but all of our energy green? Yes, I absolutely do. We need to head in that direction. But like, if I'm still driving a gas-powered car, I can't really get that mad at Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
there's that term, FUD, right? Like fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And Bitcoin has been attacked with so many different variations of this kind of fear throughout its existence, and every single time it's something new. I think that every 2 years there's like a China FUD story about like how they're gonna ban crypto altogether, and every single year it's the same deal. It just lowers the price. It's it's a great opportunity for people to get into it, and then the price shoots up. It's these are all just ways of attacking, one of the types of assets and currencies that actually empower the people. And that's what this whole website or the podcast is about, is like, how do we get empowered, not just, emotionally, spiritually, physically, but also financially as well.
Yeah. A funny thing about China. So they have banned Bitcoin mining officially from their people. Mm-hmm. And Bitcoin is now banned throughout the whole country. But because of the network, we can see where the hash rate's coming from. We can see where miners are live. So citizens of China are not allowed to mine Bitcoin or trade in it or do anything. But the government is one of the largest Bitcoin miners in the world still.
100%. They moved it all to Africa.
Yeah, it's insane to, and what I love about that too is it creates transparency. But it's a great threat to their system and the way they do things over there. And they got a lot of things going out of control. Like China is spinning out of control right now, man.
Absolutely. And it's actually, it's like an evil genius move on their end, don't empower the people, but, make the government a lot richer by, spending so much money on mining rigs. A lot of people don't know, like every single corporation that's in China, especially if they're a big corporation, you don't do anything without getting permission from the government. So essentially they're just like moving all the rigs and everything just went over to Africa where it's legal, and they have a lot of control and influence over politics, government, and financial systems in other places around the world.
Right. It's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So where do you see the economy heading right now? I know, a lot of people talk, we're about it on the verge of a recession right now. The stock market is crashing, crypto market's not doing so well, but I have a little bit more faith in that over long term. There's food shortages and all this kind of stuff. Where do you see us in the next 6 months?
6 months
to a year.
This is not intended to scare anybody. I think inflation is going to keep getting worse. The Fed is doing rate hikes right now to try to curb inflation and try to kind of curb the real estate market. I get it. I don't think that's a fix. I think they printed too much money and gave it away. Prices are going to increase. And I think, recession is a kind word. I think the stock market, there are, again, like BlackRock has $7 trillion. So they can manipulate the stock market to some degree. But if you look at the numbers on Wall Street and the numbers on Main Street, things do not add up at all. Like, the stock market is like artificially propped up by toothpicks right now. So I think 6 months from now, we're not going to see a huge change. I don't think we're going to be spun into chaos or anything, but I think we're just going to slowly kind of watch things get more expensive, watch gas get more expensive, homes get more expensive. And that's going to occur not just for 6 months, but into the upcoming years. I think we get to a point where the dollar loses its status as the reserve currency. People are really waking up to not only what inflation is, but what the petrodollar is. If you've heard about this, and essentially we've, all these countries that we have wars with in the Middle East, we liberate them, and then we put our politicians into place, or our people that are agreed over there, that we have relationships with, and then we force them to sell oil in US dollars. And that's called the petrodollar. And so as we start to make this move away from oil into green energy, I don't know that the US dollar, other than us being like the big bullies of the world and this, militarized nation, has tons of value. We consume a lot as a nation, but we don't produce a whole lot. So, I kind of think things are headed there. I don't think there's cause for panic. I do think getting away from the dollar as much as possible and into more stable assets. I love Bitcoin. I love Ethereum. I don't think it's leaning into the future, but gold and silver will hold some form of value over the dollar. Real estate is going to keep the pace with inflation. It's just how it works. I think that's where we're headed, and those are the moves to start thinking about and making. And I will say too, for the digital currency markets, you see every 4 years, if you look into the halving events of Bitcoin, every 4 years you see a price spike and then you see a pullback. And we saw a bull run price spike at the end of 2021 due to the halving event in 2020. That's also why we saw the price spike in 2017, ironically, 4 years before 2021. Same thing with 2013. Now and into the next 6 months or year or so, as we establish a new price floor on Bitcoin, is a really good time to make entry points into the asset. And the next big bull run price surge will be the end of 2024, start of 2025, with a peak somewhere around December 2025.
Yeah, amazing. So insightful. Thank you, Brant, for coming on and sharing all this knowledge. I mean, it's like, for me, it's like, so much common sense, but for a lot of people, it's really shocking to hear about, what's going on behind our economy, what's being talked about, what's being done behind the scenes, and then also, where we see ourselves in the next 6 months to a year. It's an interesting time. I think there's a lot of opportunity. People get scared of recessions, but at the same time, millionaires, billionaires are made during these times. So keep your eye on the ball and just, be aware of what's going on, and don't panic. Don't sell out of things if they don't make sense, and don't just get scared and hoard all the money in cash, because that's not necessarily what's going to help you in the long run.
Definitely don't do that. And you are 100% correct. These big players, there's guys who came from nothing and they're billionaires now. And when everyone is panicking and selling, that's when they're buying. They're calmly buying, because it's always going to bounce back. And that's an accumulation opportunity, in my opinion.
100%. So Brant, why do you think you came here to Earth as Brant? What did you want to experience?
We're getting deep. Now we're getting deeper. I think on some level, I heard the call, man. I heard like Earth sort of called out, because she is alive as well. And I think because of just the time cycle and the period of time that we're in, and her own development and her own soul growth, she's going through it right now. And I feel like I came here as a soul because I could maybe bring in a particular frequency, and I think a lot of these star seeds, whatever you want to call them, maybe the better term would be more evolved or slightly more advanced souls that have a little bit more experience in time, I guess, to come here to help hold a higher frequency, so where we can create this harmonic above fear and anger and chaos and stuff like that. I think that's one of the reasons that I came here. And also, I think, it's really exciting to come into a planet where the light walks with the dark, and where there is so much craziness going on. Just to come and observe a situation like this, that's wild. It came for the party, man.
Yeah, I hear you, brother. Same here. Calling all star seeds, right? It's crazy, because right now is the time of a great renaissance in spirituality, and people, so much light is being shown on a lot of the darkness in society. And when you see things kind of unfolding, breaking apart, it's actually a good thing, because the paradigms that used to run the system weren't necessarily in the best interest of everyone. And now those things are kind of being shed to light. A lot of people are waking up, call it the Great Awakening or whatever you want to call it. But it's a fascinating time to be alive. And like you said, like I signed up for this. I know I came here for this reason, because now that everything kind of crashes and burns and all that kind of stuff, we get to build anew. And this is what we're really here for, is creating this new world with everybody based on love, harmony, connection. And it can be magic and heaven on earth, as if everybody's intentions are aligned in that regard.
I absolutely agree. And I think that these systems that are failing are doing so very organically, even into technology and digital assets and all that stuff. I think it's more organic than we may realize. And I do think, having conversations like this, it's a personal revolution of consciousness that each individual needs to take responsibility for. And my truth isn't necessarily meant to be exactly your truth or anyone else's truth, but it's everyone's responsibility to spend a little bit of time each day in quiet meditation in their heart, figuring out what that truth is, and figuring out how to best embody that truth, and figuring out, asking the question, how can I be of service to other people? How can I help other people? Because once we realize that unity consciousness aspect of everything, we can hit critical mass quickly, and there's a whole shift in global consciousness, and that solves all the problems. That solves every issue that we're dealing with right now, quickly.
Absolutely. And I love conversations like this because, we probably spent a whole, other than the 4-hour meditation, we probably spend, 20 minutes like having this most amazing conversation at lunch about Bitcoin and, all that kind of stuff. But it just shows the reaffirmation of people like yourself, like me, who live completely separate lives. And then we come together. It's like a soul family returning to each other. And, going to events like we just did, it's like, it just, everyone you meet, it has the same kind of energy and love, and they're playing their part in this, in this puzzle piece of the world. So, for those getting down, thinking that they don't have anyone around, there's so many groups of people that are living this kind of enlightened, path to enlightenment. And just find your tribe, find the fellow starseeds in your area. Every single area has them. Everybody is becoming awakened now. And, you might, once you activate yourself, then you can help other people on their journey, finding themselves better, and then creating more love and harmony in this 3D experience. It's just an experience. We're all souls coming from another place, and we all want to make this experience a better one. And there's so many people that are doing it right now. Thank you, Brant. I appreciate it.
That's
buddy.
well said. Yeah, that's very well said. I saw something within the past couple of days. It's a little more, it's simple. It said, your new life is going to cost you your old one. And, I think when you start to transition into this, like, people might fall away, let them go. You might leave a job, you might move areas, you might move to a new country, who knows, but just stay in your heart and like trust fall with the universe, because it's going to be scary at first, but 2, 3, 5 years down the road, it's going to be a way better place to be. And it feels more like home. And I know it's scary because I've been through it, but find your tribe, and anything that doesn't resonate in your heart or above, like, let it go. Don't cling to old stories about yourself, about other people. Don't cling to old patterns. Just, letting all of that stuff go on a personal, individual level is how we see it happen on a collective level.
Yeah, 100%. And just like you said, like, there's all these systems falling apart in society. The same thing is happening in the macro as in the micro, and you will also notice a lot of things that don't serve us are going to come unraveled. And that's a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. So not to be scared of it. It's always moving us in the right direction. The universe wants to take us in. Brant, so what does God or spirituality mean to you? What role, if any, does it play in your life?
Plays a massive role. Like, I wake up every morning and meditate, sometimes for a couple hours, just getting lost in it. God, spirituality, Yahweh, Brahma, like the all in all. I think there's a lot of different names for it. Source, the field, whatever you want to call it. I think it is us. I think it comes through us. I think it has divided itself into all these different aspects of itself so that it can communicate and interact with itself to learn more about itself. So I think everything is God. And I think the center point of that is in the heart. And I think if we can stay there, then we stay more connected to that. And yeah, just walk with it every second of every day if possible.
Very profound. You're such a beautiful soul, brother, and I'm glad we got to connect like this.
Thank you, you too.
Yeah. How can we learn more about you?
More about my name is Brant Falliaux. I guess we could put my name in there. If there's somebody, I used earlier, you said I was busy. I'm really not that busy anymore. Like I kind of just do whatever I want. Yeah. So if there really is somebody that, is watching your podcast and is your people, I'm happy to like give an email link or something in this. And I'd be happy to take a call, like a half-hour call with anybody for free. Like, I don't know, it's good, but just to answer some questions or something like that. Yeah, that's me, man. I guess you could Google me.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure everyone's going to love this podcast, and we'll definitely have to do this again.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and hopefully we'll see you maybe August in Marco Island again, or Nashville or something.
For sure, we're gonna make it happen.
Absolutely. Much love, bro.
All right, brother.
We'll see you.